The dust came from space. No one knew where it came from or what it was. At first, people thought it was just a strange cloud. It moved slowly across the stars, without sound, without heat. Satellites saw it coming weeks before it reached Earth, but by then, it was already too late. Governments warned people to stay indoors. Scientists tried to study it, but the dust moved like it had a mind. It went around machines, around barriers, like it was choosing where to go. When the dust entered Earth's atmosphere, everything changed. It didn't fall like rain or snow. It floated down like a fog, quiet and soft, but deadly. The first to notice were farmers. They saw their cows acting strange, birds flying in strange circles, and the plants moving like they were breathing. The animals didn't die. They changed. Their eyes glowed. Their bodies moved differently, like something else was inside them. Trees grew longer and thicker in days. Grass turned black. Even insects started forming shapes in the dirt, like they were trying to write messages. Panic spread quickly. People ran from cities. The news showed forests that looked alive, animals that could speak without sound, and oceans that glowed at night. The world was falling apart, and no one knew why. The scientists said it was some kind of alien infection, something never seen before. But they didn't have answers. All they could say was that it infected every living thing it touched. And then it touched humans. Mira was in her small apartment when it happened. She lived alone in a quiet city near the mountains. She liked the silence. She had always been different, calm, quiet, and thoughtful. When the dust came to her city, she didn't run. She watched it float through the streets from her window. It looked like golden smoke. It moved through the air, sliding through cracks and windows like it was looking for something. That night, the dust entered her room. It didn't hurt her. She felt it on her skin, soft and cold. It went into her nose, her mouth, her eyes. She thought she would die. But she didn't. Instead, she felt a voice inside her mind. It was quiet at first, like a whisper. It didn't use words. It used feelings, pictures, emotions. She saw stars, old worlds, creatures made of light. And then, the voice asked a question, not with sound, but with thought. Why are you different? Mira didn't know what to say. She didn't even speak. But somehow, the voice heard her. It didn't leave. It stayed inside her head, watching her, learning from her. She felt stronger. Her thoughts were clearer. Her heart beat slower, calmer. The next day, she saw others who had also been touched by the dust. Some were screaming in pain. Some had gone mad. But a few, like her, were calm. Their eyes looked the same. Silent, focused, connected. News showed more chaos. The infection had taken over most animals. Forests were moving. Mountains were cracking. Even the sky had changed. Strange shapes flew through the clouds. The governments tried to fight back, but weapons didn't work. The infected life didn't die easily. Some cities were already gone. People were calling it the end of the world. But for Mira, it was something else. She didn't feel fear. She felt curiosity. She walked through the streets while others hid. The animals didn't attack her. The trees moved aside when she passed. The voice in her head grew clearer. You are not like the others, it said. You can hear me. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The voice already knew her thoughts. It showed her memories she didn't remember having. It showed her pictures of other planets, other beings. It told her stories without using words. She saw a galaxy full of life, and then she saw it all burn. She saw the dust, moving through stars, testing, searching. The dust wasn't random. It was a tool, a test, a challenge. It had been sent out by something far away, something very old. It searched for intelligent life, for minds that could adapt, survive, grow. Most life failed. They turned violent, mad, or died. But humans were different. Some of them, at least. Mira started meeting others like her. They found each other through the voice. Some called it the whisper, others called it the signal. It didn't matter. What mattered was that they were changing, but not into monsters. They were becoming something new. They could feel each other's thoughts. They could see small bits of the future. They were not infected. They were evolving. One night, Mira dreamed of the stars. She floated above the earth and saw the dust surrounding the planet like a golden shell. Inside the dream, the voice spoke clearly. "You are the key," it said. "You must decide what comes next." She woke up sweating. The room was glowing with soft light from her skin. Her heartbeat was slow, but strong. She looked in the mirror and saw herself, but somehow she also saw something else, something watching her from deep inside. Outside, the world was worse. News had stopped. Cities had gone dark. Only small groups of survivors remained. The infected world had changed too much. Most animals no longer looked like animals. Trees whispered in strange sounds. The air was full of tiny lights, always moving. Mira and the others, now called the Still, lived away from the cities. They shared thoughts without speaking. They could move things with their minds. They felt no hunger, no cold, no pain. But they also felt something else. Pressure. Something was coming. One evening, while Mira sat near a dead river, the voice returned, stronger than ever. "Phase 1 is complete," it said. "The next begins soon." She didn't know what that meant, but she felt it. Something bigger was coming. The dust wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Far above Earth, hidden behind the moon, a shape moved in the dark. It was not a ship. It was not alive. But it watched. It waited. And it had seen Mira. It knew she had passed the test. Now it would see what humans would do next. The days passed quietly, but Mira could feel the change in the air. The world wasn't like before. The cities were quiet now, filled with broken buildings, dust-covered streets, and strange moving shadows. The animals that had once roamed freely were now something else. Their eyes were cold. Their movements were not natural. They watched, but they did not attack Mira or those like her. They knew something was different. Mira walked through the ruins of what had once been a school. The dust still floated in the air, glowing faintly in the sunlight. It didn't hurt her. It felt like it was part of her now. It moved when she moved. It followed her like a soft breeze. She didn't understand it completely, but she didn't need to. She could feel its purpose. The group she had found, the Still, had grown. More people like her had survived the first wave of the infection. They were not sick. They were not mad. They were quiet, focused, and calm. They communicated through thoughts. Sometimes they would sit together for hours without speaking, but they all understood each other. They didn't need words. The dust had connected their minds. But they were not the only ones who had survived. The Ash Division was a group of soldiers, the last of the old world's army. They had survived by staying hidden in bunkers deep underground. When they came back to the surface, they didn't understand what had happened. They only saw the infected world and the strange humans who walked through it like ghosts. They thought Mira and her kind were the cause of the infection, and they were ready to fight. Mira saw their trucks first, black machines rolling through the ruined streets. The soldiers were dressed in heavy armor, their faces covered with helmets. They carried large weapons and shouted orders at each other. They moved like they were still at war, and in a way they were. But they didn't know who the enemy really was. The soldiers found Mira and her group near the edge of a dead forest. They shouted for them to freeze. Some of the Still raised their hands. Some didn't move. The soldiers pointed guns, but no one ran. Mira stepped forward. "We are not your enemy," she said. One of the soldiers shouted back, "Stay where you are. Don't come closer." Mira didn't move. She tried to speak again, but before she could say anything more, a loud sound cracked through the air. A gunshot. One of the Still fell. He didn't cry out. He just dropped to the ground, silent. That's when something strange happened. The dust reacted. It swirled around the group like a storm. The air turned gold. The soldiers stepped back, shouting in fear. Their machines stopped working. Radios went silent. The dust had taken control. Mira felt her heart slow down. She could feel the fear in the soldiers. She could hear their thoughts, jumbled, scared, confused. She saw their memories, their pain, their fear of death. She reached out with her mind, not to attack, but to show them peace. One soldier, young, shaking and scared, locked eyes with her. He dropped his gun. Mira walked up to him slowly and placed her hand on his helmet. Through the dust, she let him feel what she felt. Calm, stillness. The voice inside her whispered, "They do not understand. Show them." The soldier gasped. His body shook. Then he fell to his knees. He looked up at Mira and spoke in a quiet voice. "You're not monsters," he said. "You're evolving." The other soldiers watched in silence. They didn't fire again. Later that night, the young soldier sat with Mira. He took off his helmet. His name was Jonah. He told her everything. How his team had been ordered to destroy any infected life. How they thought Mira's kind were dangerous. But now, he wasn't sure anymore. He had seen something in her. Something human. But more. "I felt your thoughts," he said. "They were clear. Not like anything I felt before." Mira nodded. "The dust doesn't destroy. It changes. It connects us." Jonah looked around. "Then why does it make monsters?" Mira was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Because most creatures can't handle it. Their minds break. But some of us, we don't break. We become more." Jonah stayed with the group. He told his commanders that they needed to wait, to listen, but not all of them agreed. Some soldiers still wanted to wipe out anything they didn't understand. The still moved deeper into the forest, away from cities and war. They followed dreams and feelings. The dust guided them. One day, Mira saw something in her mind, a place high in the mountains where the air was clean and the dust was thick. It was calling to her. She told the others. They began their journey. Along the way, they saw more signs of change. Giant trees had formed bridges between mountains. Rivers flowed backward. The sky sometimes flickered like it was a screen. The world was being rewritten, shaped by something unseen. One night, while they camped near a glowing lake, Mira had a vision. She saw a machine, huge and ancient, floating in space. It was cold, silent, and watching. It had sent the dust. It was waiting for something. The voice came again, clearer now. "You were made for more." Mira asked, "Why me?" The voice replied, "Because you listened." She didn't know what that meant, but she felt its truth. As they reached the mountains, they found an old observatory. It was broken and overgrown, but the dust gathered there. Inside, they found strange machines still working. Screens showed symbols Mira didn't recognize, but the dust flowed into the wires, lighting up the place like a beacon. Jonah helped them power it up. Together, they discovered a hidden message buried deep in the system. It wasn't human. It was sent thousands of years ago, in a language only the dust could understand. The message was simple. Test in progress. Results pending. Observation continues. Mira's heart froze. They were being watched, judged. This was never just an accident. It was a test of life, a test of minds. And the second part was about to begin. Outside in the sky, a new shape appeared. Dark, huge, silent. The voice whispered again. Phase 2 is coming. The sky turned dark, not from clouds, but from something massive hanging above the earth. It was not a ship like the ones from human stories. It had no lights, no wings, no engines. It floated silently, blocking the stars. It looked like a shadow, but it was real, cold, watching, and ancient. People on the ground could not see it clearly, but Mira and the others could feel it. In their minds, they felt its presence like a heavy weight pressing down on their thoughts. Mira stood on the top floor of the old observatory. She stared at the strange shape in the sky. The dust around her shimmered and pulled toward the windows like it wanted to reach the object. The voice inside her mind was quiet now, almost like it was waiting too. But she could feel something else. A new presence. Not the voice she had heard before. This one was different. It was deeper, colder, and less patient. Jonah came up beside her, his face pale. "It's here, isn't it?" he asked. "Yes," Mira said softly. The second phase. They didn't know what it meant, but they could feel it starting. The air changed. The trees around the mountain stopped moving. The dust slowed down, like it was listening. Even the animals nearby stood still, their glowing eyes locked on the sky. Everything waited. Then, without warning, the voice returned, but it was not like before. It was not calm. It was sharp and direct, like metal scraping across thought. "Your kind is unstable." Mira stepped back, surprised. "Who are you?" she asked in her mind. "We are the architects," the voice answered. "We created the test. We sent the dust. You were observed." Mira felt her heartbeat rise. She tried to speak, but the voice continued. "Most species fail. They fight. They destroy. They break under pressure. You changed. You adapted. You connected. But now we must decide if you are worthy." Jonah heard the voice too. He looked around, afraid. "They're judging us," he said, "like animals in a cage." Mira didn't respond. She was focused. In her mind, she sent a thought back toward the voice. "What do you want from us?" There was silence. Then the voice said, "You must prove yourselves. One final trial. One final decision." Suddenly, the dust around them changed. It pulled together, shaping itself into a glowing circle in the air. Inside it, a vision appeared. A massive black sphere, deep in the earth. It pulsed with energy. The voice explained. "This is the core of the infection. If destroyed, the dust will leave. Earth will return to normal. But the connection will be lost. Evolution will end. You will remain human, unchanged." Mira watched the image change. It now showed Earth covered in light, humans flying, thinking as one, touching the stars. "If the core remains, your kind will change forever. You will lose what you were, but gain what you could become. You will become more. But not all will survive. Some will break. Some will resist." Jonah clenched his fists. "So we have to choose between going back to the old world or becoming something new." Mira nodded slowly. "Yes." The voice added, "One human must decide. One mind to choose your path." Mira felt the pressure on her grow. It was her. They had chosen her. She was the one. "I don't want to be a god," she whispered. "You are not," the voice replied. "You are a door." After that, the connection faded. The circle of light vanished. The dust became quiet again. That night, Mira sat alone. She remembered the world before the infection. It was full of noise, war, anger, and fear. People were always fighting. They didn't listen. They didn't care. But now, something had changed. The dust had brought connection. It had shown them a different way. But it had also brought death, chaos, fear. Jonah sat beside her after a while. "What will you do?" he asked. "I don't know," she said. "If we destroy the core, we save the world. But we lose the chance to become something more. If we keep it, we risk everything. But we might become better." Jonah looked up at the stars, or what was left of them behind the shadow in the sky. "Do you think they were ever human, those architects?" Mira didn't answer. Maybe they were. Maybe they had once stood at the same crossroads. Maybe they had made the wrong choice. Or maybe this was just how life moved forward, always risking everything for the next step. In the morning, Mira gathered the others. The still surrounded her in silence, waiting. She told them everything: the voice, the core, the choice. Some were afraid, some were angry, but none left. They all looked at her, waiting for her decision. "We have to find the core," she said. "We have to see it with our own eyes." The journey was not easy. The core was deep underground, beneath what was once a major city, now buried under dust and forest. The dust grew stronger as they got closer. It shimmered in the air like it was excited or nervous. Strange things began to happen. Time felt slower. The group stopped needing food or sleep. They moved with purpose, like the dust was carrying them. Mira could hear the thoughts of her group more clearly than ever. Their minds were becoming one. When they reached the city ruins, they found the ground split open like a wound. The core pulsed below, the giant black sphere, floating in the center of a deep pit. It was alive, but not living. Energy moved across its surface like fire made of glass. Mira stood at the edge of the pit, staring down. The voice returned, cold, distant, final. "Choose." Jonah walked beside her. "I trust you," he said. "Whatever you choose." Mira closed her eyes. Inside her, two futures played out. In one, she destroyed the core. The dust faded. The world healed. People forgot. They rebuilt their cities. Life returned to normal. But the connection was gone. Humanity remained the same. In the other, she left the core untouched. The dust spread further. People changed. Some became more. Some were lost. The world became strange, powerful, unknown. Humanity became something else. She opened her eyes. "I choose." Mira stood at the edge of the pit, staring down at the dark core that pulsed with silent energy. The voice had asked her to choose, and now the weight of that choice pressed down on her. Jonah was beside her, his expression serious, but there was a sense of calm in his eyes. He trusted her. The others waited in the distance, watching. The moment felt endless, like time itself had slowed. Mira could feel the dust swirling around her, moving through the air like it was alive. The wind seemed to carry the whispers of the past, the cries of those who had already been changed. The humans, the animals, the trees, all had been tested. And now it was her turn to decide what would happen to them all. "I choose." Mira's voice faltered. She didn't know which path was right. Both choices carried the same weight. Both would change the world forever. She closed her eyes and let the silence settle around her. In her mind, she saw two futures. One was a world of healing. People would return to their old lives. The dust would vanish and everything would go back to normal. But with that, the connection would be broken. The potential for change, for evolution, would fade. The other future was dark, uncertain. The dust would remain. It would spread. People would change, some for the better, some for the worse. But there would be no turning back. Those who survived would become something new, something that could connect with the stars, but also something that might not be fully human anymore. She took a deep breath and opened her eyes. The dust swirled around her, waiting for her decision. "I choose the change." The words felt strange, almost as if they were not her own. But the moment she spoke them, the air around her crackled with energy. The core below them pulsed brighter, sending waves of light through the pit. The ground shook, and Mira could feel the power rising from the depths. A low, mechanical hum filled the air, followed by a deep voice, different from the one that had spoken to her before. It was cold, robotic, and filled with authority. Decision confirmed. Phase 2 activated. The dust around them swirled faster, whipping through the air like a storm. Mira stepped back, her heart racing. The ground shook harder now, as if the world itself was reacting to her choice. The others gasped, some taking a step back in fear. Jonah reached for her, but she pulled away, staring down at the core. She could feel the changes happening. The world was shifting. The voice inside her mind returned, calm and almost pleased. You have chosen. The trial is not over, but the path is set. The core pulsed again, sending waves of light across the sky. The ground trembled harder now, and Mira could see the dust, once a faint shimmer, beginning to rise from the earth. It moved like a flood, covering the ruins of the city, spreading faster than anything she had seen before. It wasn't just dust anymore. It was energy. It was life. It was the future. Jonah stepped closer to her, his eyes wide with concern. Mira, what's happening? This is too much. Mira could feel it now. She could feel the thoughts of everyone around her. The still, the soldiers, the animals, even the trees, they were all connected. She could hear their fears, their hopes, their confusion. But there was something more, something deeper. The dust had connected them all, and now it was spreading. It's not just us anymore, Mira whispered. It's everyone. The voice spoke again, louder this time. The test is ongoing. The outcome will be determined by how the connection spreads. Will your kind rise, or will it fall? Mira felt a sudden surge of fear. She had chosen, but she didn't fully understand the consequences. The dust had begun to change everything. What if it was too much? What if the world was not ready for this? She turned to Jonah. We have to stop it. Jonah shook his head, his face filled with uncertainty. How? It's already happening. It's too late to stop now. Mira looked at the others, the group of survivors standing in the distance. They were all waiting for her. She could feel their trust in her, but she also felt their fear. They didn't know what this change would bring. They didn't know if they would survive. The dust continued to rise, swirling around the pit like a living creature. It was consuming the city, flowing into every building, every crack in the earth. The air was thick with it now, and Mira could feel the energy buzzing in her veins. It was as if she could hear the world itself changing. The voice inside her mind spoke again, this time with a hint of finality. The test will soon be complete. You cannot undo your choice. You will either evolve or perish. Mira closed her eyes and let the dust move around her. She felt the connection grow stronger, the power of the dust filling her mind. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. She could feel the future unfolding in front of her, a path that stretched into the unknown. But she wasn't alone. She could feel Jonah beside her, his thoughts mixing with hers. She could feel the others, their thoughts forming a collective bond. They were all part of this now, and together they would face whatever came next. Mira took a deep breath. The world had changed. There was no going back. But she would not face this alone. She would face it with the people who had chosen to follow her, to trust her. They would rise or fall together. The dust swirled around her, pulling her toward the core. Mira stepped forward, feeling the weight of the choice she had made. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about everyone, about humanity's future, about what they could become. And just as she stepped into the center of the pit, a final wave of energy erupted from the core. The ground shook violently, and the air exploded with light. Mira felt herself lifted off the ground, her body floating, surrounded by the dust. It felt like she was flying, like she was becoming part of the world itself. In that moment, Mira understood. The architects had created the test, but it was up to them to decide what came next. The world was no longer bound by the past. It was free to evolve, to change. The choice had been made, and now humanity would see what it could become. The light from the core was blinding, a flash of pure energy that engulfed everything. Mira felt herself rise, lifted by the dust, surrounded by a whirlwind of thoughts, emotions, and memories. She could hear the voices of her people, the still, echoing in her mind. They were all connected now. The dust had changed them. They had become something more, something greater. But it was also terrifying. The world around her shifted. The buildings, the trees, the sky, all began to change. The dust, once a gentle whisper in the air, now flowed like a river, filling the gaps between reality and imagination. It was rewriting everything, reshaping the world in its image. Mira felt her own mind expand. It was like she could see the thoughts of every living thing. Not just humans, but animals, plants, even the very earth itself. It was all connected. All of it was alive. And it was beautiful. But it was also fragile. As Mira floated, suspended in the air, she felt a sudden fear grip her. What if this was too much? What if they had gone too far? What if humanity, in its desire for more, had lost everything that made them human? The dust around her pulsed again, sending a wave of energy through her body. She closed her eyes, feeling the power surge within her. She could hear the core's heartbeat, a low hum that vibrated through the very ground beneath her. The architects, who had once watched from the shadows, now seemed distant. Their judgment had been passed. The choice had been made. And the world was now in their hands. Slowly, the light began to fade. Mira's feet touched the ground, and she opened her eyes. The world around her had changed. It wasn't just the city. It wasn't just the earth. It was everything. The air was clearer now, almost alive. The dust, once a swirling mass of energy, had become a part of the world itself. It no longer filled the air like a storm, but flowed like a river, alive and moving with purpose. The people of the still stood around her, their faces filled with awe and wonder. They were no longer the same as before. They had evolved, their minds connected, their thoughts shared. They could feel each other now without words. Their eyes glowed with the same light that now filled the air. They had become part of the new world, and they were not afraid. Jonah stepped forward, his face uncertain. Mira, his voice was soft, but there was a new strength in it. What have we done? Mira looked around. The ground beneath her feet seemed to pulse with life, as if the earth itself was breathing. The sky above was clearer than she had ever seen it. Stars twinkled, brighter than ever before. It felt like the world had awakened. But there was a heaviness to it, too. The choice they had made was irreversible. The world would never be the same. We've changed everything, Mira said, her voice calm. But it was always meant to be this way. This was the only path forward. The old world, it was dying. We had to evolve. We had to become something more. Jonah nodded, but his eyes were still filled with doubt. But what about the others? The ones who didn't make it. The ones who couldn't adapt. He paused, looking at the others who had gathered around. What about the rest of humanity? Mira sighed. The truth was painful. Not everyone had survived the change. Some had resisted the connection, unable to accept what was happening. They had fought against it, rejected the dust, and in doing so had lost their chance at evolution. They were still human, in the old sense of the word, but they were isolated, alone. Their minds were no longer connected to the world around them. They had been left behind. But that was the price of the new world. Some had to stay behind so that the rest could move forward. The rest of humanity will have to find their own way, Mira said softly. They will have to decide for themselves if they want to evolve too. But we can't force them. This is our path now. Jonah looked down, his expression conflicted. He wanted to believe in Mira's vision, but the cost of that vision weighed heavy on his heart. He didn't know if he was ready to leave behind the old world, the world he had known all his life. Mira placed a hand on his shoulder. We can't look back, Jonah. We have to move forward. Together. The others nodded in agreement. There was a new understanding among them, a shared connection that transcended words. The dust had bonded them, not just as individuals, but as one living organism. They were no longer separate. They were part of the same pulse, the same rhythm. They had become something more than human. They had become something greater. And yet, as Mira looked out at the horizon, she couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was just beginning. The world had changed, but it was still fragile. They had unlocked something powerful, something dangerous. And with that power came responsibility. They would have to guide the new world, help it grow, and protect it from those who still clung to the old ways. But Mira was ready. She had made her choice, and she would lead them forward, no matter the cost. As the sun began to rise over the horizon, casting a golden glow over the changed world, Mira took a deep breath. The air was fresh, clean. The earth beneath her feet hummed with life. She felt the connection between everything. The people, the animals, the plants, even the sky. It was all one. And in that moment, she knew that this was just the beginning. The architects had set the test. They had watched. They had judged. But humanity had passed. And now it was up to them to shape the future. Mira stepped forward, the dust flowing around her, and the others followed. Together, they walked into the new world. And as they did, the earth beneath them seemed to echo their steps, as if it too was taking its first breath in a new age. The world had been reborn, and humanity was ready to rise. With that, the story concludes. I hope this wraps up the journey in a satisfying way. If you'd like to tweak any part of the final chapter or need adjustments, feel free to let me know.